The Moon, Earth's closest celestial neighbor, has fascinated scientists, astronomers, and explorers for centuries. While its barren and serene surface may appear unthreatening at first glance, beneath that calm exterior lie numerous hazards that make certain areas of the Moon highly dangerous for human exploration. As missions to the Moon become more ambitious, especially with NASA's Artemis program aiming to establish a sustainable human presence, understanding these risks becomes critical. Among the most perilous locations on the Moon are the far side, often called the dark side, the deep craters located at the lunar poles, and the overall volatile lunar landscape, which is subject to extreme conditions. This article delves into the most dangerous places on the Moon and the extreme environments that make them hazardous for astronauts and missions. The dark side of the Moon. A cold, isolated, and radiation-exposed world. The dark side of the Moon is a term that often causes confusion. It doesn't refer to a literal dark place, but rather the far side of the Moon, which is always facing away from Earth. Due to the Moon's synchronous rotation, it rotates once on its axis for every orbit around Earth. One hemisphere constantly faces our planet, while the other is hidden from view. Communication blackout. One of the most significant dangers of the far side is the communication blackout it imposes. Since the far side faces away from Earth, there is no direct line of sight for radio signals. This means that any spacecraft or astronauts on the far side would be unable to communicate directly with Earth unless there are intermediary relay satellites, like the one used during the Chang'e 4 mission, which enabled communication for the first ever landing on the far side in 2019. For future human missions, this communication blackout creates a dangerous isolation. In case of emergencies, astronauts could be cut off from mission control, and their response time would be significantly delayed. This makes the far side especially risky for manned missions without constant communication support. Extreme temperature fluctuations. Like the rest of the Moon, the far side experiences extreme temperature fluctuations due to the absence of an atmosphere. During the lunar day, temperatures on the Moon's surface can reach a scorching 127 degrees Celsius, 260 degrees Fahrenheit. While at night, temperatures can plummet to minus 173 degrees Celsius, minus 280 degrees Fahrenheit. This drastic range makes any sustained human presence extremely challenging. In particular, the far side's temperature fluctuations could cause problems for spacecraft and habitats, which would need to be specially designed to withstand such extreme conditions. Spacesuits and equipment would need to be insulated to protect astronauts from these extremes, and power generation through solar panels would be severely impacted, particularly during the long lunar nights. Radiation exposure. With no protective atmosphere or magnetic field, the Moon offers no shield against solar radiation and cosmic rays. While radiation is a constant hazard throughout the entire lunar surface, the far side offers no potential shelter. During solar flares or coronal mass ejections, astronauts could face elevated levels of radiation, leading to health risks like radiation sickness, cellular damage, and long-term cancer risks. Deep lunar craters, traps at the poles. At the Moon's poles, there are deep craters that remain permanently in shadow, and these dark regions present unique dangers. Some of these craters are thought to contain significant deposits of water ice, which could be a vital resource for human missions. However, these areas also harbor severe environmental challenges. Permanently shadowed regions. The craters at the poles, such as the Shackleton crater near the Moon's south pole, are in near-permanent shadow. Because the Moon's axis is tilted at just 1.5 degrees, these regions never experience direct sunlight. In these permanently shadowed areas, temperatures can drop to as low as minus 250 degrees Fahrenheit, minus 157 degrees Celsius. The extreme cold makes it extremely difficult for both humans and machines to function. For astronauts, such temperatures could freeze equipment, spacesuits, and even the water used for drinking and oxygen generation. Any habitats or scientific instruments would need to be specially insulated and designed to cope with this freezing cold. Hazardous terrain and accessibility. Deep craters also present significant physical risks due to their steep walls, uneven terrain, and unpredictable surfaces. The jagged edges and uneven ground make navigating these areas dangerous for astronauts, whether they are traveling by rover or on foot. Climbing in and out of these craters would be no easy feat, and the risk of slips, falls, or equipment malfunctions is high. Additionally, the composition of the lunar regolith in these areas remains largely unexplored. adding uncertainty to the environment. The sharp, fine particles of dust can cause damage to equipment and spacesuits, increasing the difficulty of working in these harsh regions. Unstable subsurface and lack of solar power. Deep craters may also have an unstable subsurface, and any underground exploration could uncover hidden dangers. The presence of water ice beneath the surface might make these craters valuable for future human settlements. But drilling and extracting water could expose astronauts to further risks, such as cave-ins or encountering unknown volatile compounds. Moreover, because these areas are in constant darkness, solar power, which is critical for lunar missions, would be inaccessible. This necessitates the use of alternative energy sources like nuclear reactors, further complicating mission logistics. Volatile lunar landscape, the danger of extreme environmental conditions. Beyond the far side and deep craters, the general lunar landscape is filled with other dangers that could threaten the safety of astronauts. The lack of an atmosphere combined with extreme temperatures, radiation, and dust creates an environment that is hazardous in several ways. Lunar dust, a persistent and dangerous threat. Lunar dust is one of the most persistent and dangerous hazards on the moon. The moon's surface is constantly bombarded by micrometeorites, which cause the regolith, the moon's soil, to break down into fine, sharp particles. These dust particles are not only abrasive but also cling to surfaces, including spacesuits, equipment, and even the air filters of habitats. The dust can cause significant damage to equipment by scratching delicate surfaces or getting into machinery, leading to malfunctions. In addition, astronauts breathing in lunar dust could face long-term health risks, including respiratory issues similar to silicosis. These fine particles are also difficult to remove, making decontamination after a lunar excursion a challenge. Solar flares and cosmic radiation. The moon's surface is exposed to the full force of solar radiation and cosmic rays. Unlike Earth, which has a protective magnetic field and atmosphere, the moon offers no such shield. Solar flares, which are sudden bursts of energy from the sun, can increase radiation levels dramatically, posing a serious risk to human health. Long-term exposure to these radiation levels could lead to radiation sickness, DNA damage, and even cancer. Given that the lunar environment lacks protection from this radiation, astronauts will need to seek shelter in underground caves or specially constructed habitats that can provide adequate shielding. Understanding the moon's radiation environment will be essential for future human missions to the lunar surface. Temperature extremes. The moon's surface temperatures vary wildly, with daytime temperatures reaching 127 degrees Celsius, 260 degrees Fahrenheit, and nighttime temperatures dropping to minus 173 degrees Celsius, minus 280 degrees Fahrenheit. These fluctuations are among the most extreme temperature swings experienced in the solar system. The lack of atmosphere means there is no gradual transition from day to night, and this rapid change in temperature can be deadly if not managed properly. For astronauts, these temperature extremes present logistical challenges. Spacesuits would need to be highly insulated, and habitats would require advanced thermal control systems to maintain a survivable temperature for humans. Even the lunar rovers would need to be designed to withstand these fluctuations without breaking down. Facing the moon's challenges. While the moon may seem like an ideal target for human exploration and settlement, it is far from an easy environment to navigate. From the cold, isolated far side to the perilous deep craters at the poles and the volatile, extreme lunar landscape, the moon presents several deadly challenges that must be overcome. Understanding and mitigating these dangers will be critical for the success of future lunar missions. As humanity prepares to return to the moon through programs like NASA's Artemis mission and international collaborations, understanding and mitigating these dangers is paramount. Advanced technologies, such as autonomous rovers, radiation shielding, and robust communication systems, will be required to ensure the safety and sustainability of those who venture into these dangerous locations. Additionally, detailed mapping and remote sensing of hazardous regions will help minimize risks. The moon may be humanity's first step into deep space, but it is one that requires careful consideration and respect for the extreme conditions it offers.